Ladies and gentlemen, this is El Cochino, Tom Lawler, and I'd like to welcome you to the podcast that puts a little lotion on its own skin, LuchaWorld. Bitchin'.
Welcome, everyone, to LuchaWorld Podcast, episode number 79. I'm your host, Fredo Esparza. I'm not alone this week. Usually Kurt's on here, but he's on assignment. I think he's doing that other podcast, the 605 podcast, that he's so popular. He's gaining so much popularity from that, and somehow it's adding more followers to the long dead Slam and Stand podcast for some reason. But this week we have a special guest, first time ever on the LuchaWorld podcast, from LuchaBlog.com, the Cubs fan. How are you doing, Cubs?
Good. I can't believe it took you 79 episodes to invite me on here. I'm almost offended.
Yeah, well, you know, we when we started doing LuchaWorld podcast, we would switch back and forth between doing it over the phone. We're technically horrible with Skype, so basically we would do it over TalkShoe. So I think the early episodes I think we only had like Dr. Lucha on once, and then we gave up on phone calls and just went to an audio recorder. But yeah, we're back to doing everything. You know, a recorder, a phone, everything. We're going to try to get more callers, more guests, more callers. You know, maybe do a call-in show at some point. But, you know, for this week, I wanted to have you on because actually I wanted you to talk about the big weekend feud, the big weekend matchup between Jack Swagger and Alberto. That was really what I want to talk to you about on when I contacted you on last week. But apparently something bigger happened on early Friday that took us by surprise. Now, when you first heard about it, was it from that tweet that Puro Libre sent us?
No, someone had DM'd me with the link with the video, and I had seen it, and I was like, I didn't want any part of this. I wonder if it's going to become a big story, but I don't want to be the one who talks about this. And then everyone talked about it, and it was fine.
Yeah, I know when Puro Libre sent it, he didn't send a link, so I was like, I guess I got to look for it on Facebook. But, you know, that was pretty, all you had to type in was Alvarado family, and sure enough, you found a video, basically cell phone quality, really bad video. I mean, there were a few people who thought it was, like, old because you couldn't really tell Maximo Sexy's tattoo on the video. What's shown in this video is the entire, a portion of the Alvarado family, maybe the entire family for all we know, showed up, and they're shown in this video destroying Ultimo Guerrero's car. Happened to be a blue Mustang, which actually I think, what show was this on? His Mustang? Because I remember it being on the En Busca de un Ídolo show. It was on another one too, right?
I don't remember if it was on another show, but that sounds right.
Yeah, because I remember it was the one where he was running over Tony Salazar, right?
Yes. Yeah, that was the show.
Yeah, so we basically get this video. What we see is an unmasked psycho clown going at this car, the back end of the car. Basically, you see the front portion of the car that's pretty much the hood's already picked up. You see the car doors are open. You see, I think it's Brazo de Platino just like smashing it with his hand, grabbing whatever he could get just to hit the car. Then they start taking out the headlights. Maximo, Sexy, and La Mascara are standing on the, like, a couple of feet away from it for about a minute of the video, and maybe like the final 10-15 seconds, you see Maximo walk towards the car, and then the video ends. So basically, we were all kind of confused because the first thing I think everybody was asking online was if this was a shoot or a work, because it's pro wrestling, and I think everybody assumes that. But I think what I was really curious about was when it initially when this happened, because you know there's a lot of stories about the Alvarado family being very temperamental. Did you think it was actually happening that it happened on Friday?
You know, I wasn't sure at first. I know, I know Ultimo had that car for a while, but I think Rob had mentioned that he saw that car when he was there, when he was in Mexico last. So I knew it couldn't be that old, but I wasn't sure. I mean, it seemed like the footage was so without any context that it could have been from a couple months ago. It could have been from that day. It just wasn't clear at first.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, like, people were pointing out how the Alvarado family didn't really work with they weren't usually booked in Ultimo Guerrero's matches because of the whole Guerrero Laguneros breakup and all that, or whatever has been going on during the last couple of weeks. But I don't think I really put two and two together about this whole issue going on. What was the initial was there any story? What was the initial story to what happened? Were there people actually saying that there was something else beyond what later we found out was a union issue that the Alvarado family had with Ultimo Guerrero? Was there anything else going on? Were they saying anything else other than it being people confused whether it was a work?
No, I don't think there was really no idea what was supposed to be going on until that union story came out, and it took a while for that union story to come out to make it clear. I think everyone was just kind of confused about why that would be happening.
Yeah, tell everybody about the whole union, the involvement, why this all happened, the reason for it happening with the union and all that.
Well, Brazo de Oro was in charge of the CML union for about 20 years until his death, and the union is apparently in charge of deciding who gets to work in CML to some degree, and so that they have some sort of power about allowing different people in, about some bit of promoting small shows themselves that Brazo de Oro did, that they collect dues from everyone in the union so they have some money coming in. It's not always clear where that money was going. So when he passed away, the rest of the Alvarado family assumed that they would keep control of the union because they'd basically run it like it was a family business themselves, and they wanted to keep that business. They felt they kind of owned the union, so that's kind of their property, and they should keep on having it even after Brazo de Oro passed away. But it sounds like Paco Alonso, who's technically has the right to decide who's in charge of the union, so it's not like a normal union where the wrestlers would be controlling themselves, that Paco Alonso decided that Ultimo Guerrero would instead be in charge of the union. And the Alvarado family was upset about that, upset about whatever Ultimo Guerrero had said about how Brazo de Oro had run the union when he was in charge, and decided to take that out on Ultimo Guerrero's completely innocent blue Mustang.
The poor Mustang. I mean, and we've seen, if you go on Ultimo Guerrero's Facebook page, he actually posts videos of him in his Mustang, taking his kids to, for Mother's Day, he had a video with his daughters in the car, and I thought, man, this poor guy. I mean, and if he has a Mustang, it's got to be something. He's got to be very attached to that car. I'm curious. It just seems like I would assume that I'm pretty sure they assumed that nobody was going to film this. But don't you think there would have been a better way of them responding to Ultimo Guerrero being off, given the union leadership? Don't you think they could have done something there's supposedly an election. Maybe they could have gone to the wrestlers and maybe gotten them to change their votes or something else. I mean, because it just seems like something that came out of the Blue Demon TV series. Really, I mean, if you would have told me this was from the Blue Demon TV series, I would have believed that more than it happening in reality. But don't you think they could have done something a little more differently than just destroying his car?
Yeah, it sounds like it was weird because even though they know it was being taped, as far as we can tell, they didn't actually seem that concerned if anyone saw them. So that was one weird thing, because I think if you were trying to do something sneaky as in the message, you would have tried to do something that was a little bit more hidden. But it also seemed like it was an escalation to a point that probably doesn't make sense that it got to that fast, that there should have been either, within the rules or some sort of fighting to get back control, or for even smaller gestures before breaking someone's car.
Yeah.
It's either what the people associated with AAA are hinting at, that there's more going on and there was more back and forth leading to this, and this was the Alvarados have been pushed really far, or that the Alvarados just have a a quick trigger and went way overboard for something that probably didn't deserve that big of a response.
Yeah, and the other thing was in the video, what you really see, the person you see most like doing the damage is really Psycho Clown and I think it was Brazo de Platino, which they're not really in CML. So in a weird way, maybe like I think once you get the entire thing, like apparently like a couple of like the next day we heard stories about CML having security footage, or because it kind of seemed like they have to have had more like beyond the minute or the 90 seconds of the video, because in the video you don't see La Mascara and Maximo doing anything. But as Rob and you pointed out, that parking lot is pretty much there's security right there, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a security guy who's opening and closing the sliding gate near there. That probably should have seen or heard something, even if they were on the other side of the wall at that moment. So, and again, they didn't seem like they were in a rush to get done. They were hanging around there long enough that someone probably should have wandered by or heard what was going on. And it's strange that didn't happen.
Yeah, and the way like Psycho Clown and Maximo have really reacted, it doesn't seem like they really cared about being seen or anything. They're still very happy-go-lucky. La Mascara has disappeared off the internet basically right now. So basically on Saturday we got the next big news, because everybody was wondering what was going to happen to La Mascara and Maximo Sexy. Obviously, before that, Ultimo Guerrero mentioned on his Facebook page, he posted the links to the Super Lucha stories. He was asked if he was going to file charges by a fan, and he mentioned he would. We still don't know about that, and there's been a few people who have said that there's really no point in him filing charges with criminal charges because it's Mexico, and crime there really doesn't. It never gets resolved, anything of that nature. But the next day, I think Ernesto Ocampo was the one that mentioned La Mascara and Maximo Sexy had been fired. You heard about this around the same time, didn't you?
I had heard the person who, actually the same person who sent me the video had told me that they had been let go, but I could not find out. They let me know early that morning, so I know that story had been going around, but I couldn't find someone else who would tell me for sure that was the case. But it seemed like it was heading that way based on what had happened the day before.
Yeah, and I think we all kind of figured something like that would happen, just because of how the whole how CML's roster is built, where you have a lot of guys who came in through Ultimo Guerrero, through the Ultimo Guerrero and Blue Panther, the Lagunero guys, and a lot of those guys are very tight. So you figured there was going to be something that I kind of figured CMLL probably had to react a little quicker than usual because of that possibility of a retaliation where they didn't really want to be part of it. I don't think they wanted anything to happen within their buildings or their parking lots or anywhere near their arenas. So basically, I guess at that point, right after that, we start getting Vampiro and all these other guys saying that the story was basically blown out of proportion or not told correctly by, they basically directly mentioned, Vampiro directly mentioned Dave Meltzer, and other people kind of throw it at the media or redes sociales, social media. So I think that was basically what it was like for about the weekend. Maximo got asked about this story. He basically was very, he was very jokish about it. Didn't really want to comment to it. He showed up and he wrestled in Chicago. Did you show up? Did you end up going to that show?
No, I watched it. They were doing a Facebook stream, so I watched it on there, but I didn't end up being there myself. Yeah,
because you could have got the interview.
I could have, but I usually don't get great access on that show. And Maximo had already made some joke about how he didn't know anything was going on, what people were talking about. So yeah. I assumed that he just wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah, and as he said, he made a joke about he didn't realize the CML offices were open on weekends, which is another one of those ongoing jokes about the CML office, their office hours really being within 4 hours during the weekdays, and really nothing much beyond that. So on Monday, CMLL sends out a press release where they announce Nitro as the interim union leader. At the same time, they announced that La Mascara, Maximo Sexy, and Bobby Villa had been fired from the promotion. Now, we knew Maximo Sexy, there was something up with him because he was pulled off the Friday show. Now, Bobby Villa, when did he get pulled off the Friday show? That's what I'm totally confused with. When did he get pulled off that show?
They never officially announced anything. He just Sagrado just showed up in the space. And, with CML, people miss shows. It's not like there's people missing on every show, but there's people missing a fair bit that if someone gets replaced, you usually just don't think anything of it.
Yeah, and that's what I thought. When I saw Sagrado and Bobby Villa, they just, it's like those random trios of Cranio with Rush and Piroz, basically that's kind of like what it felt like. So basically they fired them. Did you think that was was the reaction early or right timing, more or less?
I think it was the right timing because I think you couldn't bring them back, and that I think they knew the situation was bad enough that they weren't going to want to stick around either. So it was better for CML's own benefit to break with those two guys, Will Master and Maximo particularly, before, just so you could say that you did something to appease the people who were left.
Do you know more or less what happened with Bobby Villa, or you still haven't heard anything about that?
I have not heard anything. It's the biggest mystery.
Yeah, because Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I would have expected that someone would have wanted to tell the story because it's the thing that everyone wants to know, but no one seems to know.
Yeah, because I know when a couple of people asked me if he was involved, and I said, well, no, he could be involved, but knowing CMLL, maybe they're so maybe they figured they're doing a press release, might as well just announce everyone they got rid of all at once. As Bobby Villa, we later found out the Mas Lucha guys tried to interview. They actually got a hold of Bobby Villa, but he didn't. He declined an interview, but he did talk to Jose Manuel, and he basically told him that he did not know why he was fired, and he planned to talk with CMLL at some point. I don't know what's going to come of that. I'm guessing he's pretty much done. I mean, he's pretty much fired from the promotion. Because La Mascara and Maximo Sexy, I know Maximo Sexy earlier today made a joke about being in Arena Mexico, but he was in Arena Coliseo or something. I think that's what he was that was the location that was given on his Facebook page. Do you think their next step in their careers, well, assuming there's no criminal charges, do you expect all three or two of them or one of them in AAA, or where do you expect them to go next?
I expect they're showing up in AAA as soon as they're able to. I mean, the reaction from Vampiro and from Arturo Rivera and from Leo Riano has been defending them like they were already part of AAA, and this was a AAA versus CML issue, so they were going to have their guys back. I just think that with the way that AAA really wants to bring in names anyways, that under any circumstances they would have brought these guys in, and that they haven't done anything with Psycho Clown, and that they kind of defended these guys' actions means that they're probably active recruiting to come in. I think the only way they don't come to AAA is if they have some other better offer from WWE or someplace else. And I don't think that's a likelihood for either guy.
Yeah, I know La Mascara has been mentioned, but it's weird. He's been mentioned in WWE rumors, but it's not really I don't know if they're legitimate WWE rumors. You know what I mean? It kind of seems a little he doesn't seem like he'd be a fit there. I don't know. No,
it seems like rumors that the people involved are starting to try to get themselves more leverage than something that's really going to happen.
Yeah. Them losing CMLL, that pretty much eliminates their leverage with AAA. I mean, they basically have independence and AAA as their leverage, because I don't even know how they're because doesn't CMLL hold their visas as well or something, or do you assume they have their own work visas, travel visas?
I assume that they have their own, and that they may not be doing it completely work visa legal in the U.S. when they come in the U.S., but they may be doing it other ways. But But I would assume that they take care of that stuff. They get that stuff booked themselves as it is.
So you mentioned off air that you watch AAA TV, and you're probably one of the few people who actually keeps watching every week. If La Mascara and Maximo Sexy do end up in AAA, how much better will the TV show be?
It depends on how they use them. Because even though La Mascara, especially, is not really that good, not that good consistently in CML, there's so many people who are just kind of like bad or just like way overexposed that those guys could still be improvement. It's just that the booking of the show is all over the place, and that they're not really giving time for anyone to have good matches anyways. I'm not sure if they'll help. Maybe they'll be good in the backstage acting segments, but I think AAA is it's so weird right now that I'm not sure that adding anyone necessarily helps them.
So the other well, I mean, really the other thing you look at within this firing is how does it affect CMLL? In the short term, do you think it's going to hurt them, or how is this going to affect them, like, going forward? Because, I mean, Maximo, obviously these two guys Maximo Sexy was the world heavyweight champion, and La Mascara was the light heavyweight champion. So we do know there's going to be a tournament, so this seems to be something that CML loves to do. So they're getting two tournaments, which is something that they could fill an entire show with. But how do you see their departures, and Bobby V as well, how do you see their departures affecting their CML shows?
I think it's going to hurt them, especially more in the short term, because they're going to have to find two guys to make important, and just to find out what they're going to do with the Ingobernables, what they're going to do with Dragon Rojo's group, because they seem like they had something with Bobby Villa in that group that was much better than those guys on their own.
Yeah.
And now they've lost the momentum. And I think in the longer term, I think losing Maximo's can be more of a problem, because even though Maximo's essentially been playing the same character now since 2004, but he's such a character that gets over so easily to casual audiences that they've really lost Super Porky in that same role as a guy who gets over pretty easily too, that they don't have someone that they can easily just move up into that place. I think that I think in the long term they might be better, because whoever they give to that spot to La Mascara might do better for it, because La Mascara always seemed like a guy who was like, as he wanted to inherit the Union spot, he inherited the good spot on the cards because he was the son of the Brazos, and he was always pushed higher than he really showed in the ring. He did fine sometimes, he did good sometimes, but maybe if they give someone else that opportunity, they'll make more of it than he ever did.
Yeah, I think for me, at least just for me watching CML, I guess part of me is kind of glad to see the Ingobernables. Like, I would love to see the Ingobernables trio just like be disbanded and just keep Rush, because those matches are so bad. But at the same time, you know that's not going to happen, because you're going to keep Pierrot, Rush, and they're just going to find somebody else to fill in as the third member of the trio. So we're still going to get those same matches. With Maximo Sexy, I do agree about the whole. He's one of the most over guys in the promotion. I do get tired of his. I think casual fans enjoy him more than I would, just because. And that's when people like listen to me and they say how much I dislike him and stuff like that. It's not. I don't dislike him. It's just I've been watching the same act, and when I was on watching every single CML show, it's like, you kind of get tired of it. But I do see that, like, how big a loss he is. At the same time, I kind of just want to, CML doesn't change. Like, it very rarely changes unless it's like something that's forced upon them. And losing three guys is a pretty big change for them, especially two guys who are champions and really main event guys. I'm going to miss Bobby Villa just because I really like the Revolucionarios trio. I really thought they were probably the best trio in CML the last month and a half. But maybe that's because they were the only ones that were regularly teaming, and everybody else is kind of like all over the place. Because I really think the best trio would probably end up being the Casas family. So what do you think they'll do with the titles? Do you think Do you think they're just going to go with like the next in line guy, or go back with somebody from the past that held the belt, like Terrible or Ultimo Guerrero? Actually, Ultimo Guerrero could probably win both, either title or both. As pay for payoff for losing his car.
Yeah, but he's got the middleweight title, so they can't give for the stupid Universal tournament. They can't give him multiple titles.
Yeah. Yeah, it's coming pretty soon too.
I would assume that I'm guessing that Terrible ends up with the heavyweight title. I think it would be great if they gave Marco a run, just because I think he would fit as champion, and he's the most over guy that doesn't really get much to do. So you don't really have to have him if they're not big fans of Marco singles matches for a reason. They don't really have to defend the title that much, because they never really defend the title all that much.
Yeah.
The light heavyweight one is more interesting to me because there's more guys who could fit with light heavyweight. I'm afraid that they're just going to hand it to Rick Bucanero or somebody like that. But I would like to see, it'd be at least interesting if the payoff to all the Niebla Roja stuff is that Niebla Roja Tactico wins the title and defends it against like the Gran Guerreros and Euphorias of the world.
That would be a great. I mean, considering he's getting pushed, and I think they're working the main event. I think on one of the next week's shows, aren't they?
Yeah, they're working on Monday, maybe. The shows run together. Yeah,
because I saw him and Angel de Oro were teaming up with Mystico, so I kind of like that. The fact that they're kind of elevating Niebla Roja. The other thing I noticed since Brazo de Oro passed away, you're also seeing some guys who were around last year, like mid last year. They're kind of making their way back on CML shows. Templario, Yago. Even though they've been around every so often, but they kind of seem to be showing up a little more often. Do you think that's one of the effects of Ultimo Guerrero kind of gaining more power?
I think it might be, especially since Ultimo Guerrero was training some of those guys, and that I think it probably was. I would assume a point for frustration that guys that he was spending a lot of time developing and hoping that they would make CML were not getting those opportunities. Especially like Temporario would show up as a trainee in some of the videos he was posted, and he went like 6 months without getting booked. And he's no great guy, but neither are any of the other guys that in the opener. It doesn't seem like anybody but a Dinamita was getting a decent booking coming into the promotion. So I don't know if it's everything to do with Brazo de Oro or something else going on, but I think it's at least a nice change that we get to see guys like Yago again.
Yeah. Somebody asked me if Leono was going to get pushed with these guys leading, and I thought, no. I think we could move away from Leono from now on. He's not getting any type of push. So that's really been the big news in Lucha. Ultimo Guerrero, we still don't know. I think this is still going to be an ongoing story, just because we expect the La Mascara and Maximo, Sexy, and Bobby Villa to show up somewhere. I'm guessing they'll end up in AAA. I would be shocked if they. Do you think they would? Do you think there's any shot of them just going independent and working like Full, Crash, and all those places, or is it AAA or bust really right now?
I think AAA is going to give them the best deal. I think they would also. The problem with going independent is that it might be a situation where CML guys are not allowed to work with them on shows, and that would limit the independent ones they can work. I mean, they could work the same random shows like the elite guys are working too, but I think they would be so valuable to AAA. I think that AAA is going to make them a deal that they're going to want to accept.
Do you see anybody coming back to CMLL based off these guys leaving? Since they need a headline, they need a main event type of. Maybe they think they need a main eventer, or do you think they'll just stick with the guys that they have?
I think they're more likely just to stick with the guys they have, because they're just kind of. They're not real. They never seem like to bring in those top guys, because then those top guys are going to want more than their guys.
The thing that I was talking about with a couple of other people was the reaction to when guys leave CMLL. Because I mean, if you look at the number of talent that CMLL has lost in the last year, they've lost a lot of guys. I mean, Mascara, Dorada, Rey Escorpion, now Maximo, La Mascara, Bobby Villa, Demos 316, all these guys are really good. So it's like, anywhere between good and really good, amazing. And AAA has lost, Pentagon, Phoenix, Daga, all this other talent, Alberto, Rey Mysterio. but we kind of noticed that there's the reaction to the guys leaving in CMLL. It isn't the same as when AAA loses talent. Do you notice that also, or is it just because CMLL has so much more depth to them?
I think it's because CMLL has much more depth, and that there wasn't the drama over different people leaving beforehand, building up to that moment where, I mean, no one would have guessed a week ago that Maximo and Mascara were going to be fired from the promotion, but we had Alberto and Rey Mysterio seemingly not being completely happy there before they left, and this is this too. And then we had the whole situation where people were wanting more out, where Phoenix and Pentagon were obviously breaking out in every place but their home company, and pressure being put on AAA to do something, instead those guys leaving. I think because of the suddenness of it, and because there's not just this big arc of AAA building all the way up and then having that disastrous Triple Mania and falling back down. That just seems kind of like a blip of a couple things, and then like a whole company falling apart. Yeah,
it's the weirdness of the firing. I can't recall. Like, I was trying to think about this, like when they announced the firings. I can't recall a time where there's been 3 guys who were fired for this type of situation, like the incident they had. I can't really, like, even in the U.S. and Japan, I can't think of a firing of this level. Like 2 main event guys and a pretty good mid card wrestler. I think the only time I could really think of was maybe Sean Waltman getting fired from WCW. And then him going I think the following week he showed up in Raw or something and had that amazing, he ripped WCW to shreds, and, that kind of turned around Raw. But can you remember any other firing like this?
Wasn't there a thing like in All Japan, like in the 2000s, where there was a fight backstage over something? I don't know if those guys were as important to their promotion as Maximo and Mascara. I just don't know that promotion well enough. That's the other thing. And I think there was a time where a whole stable of people walked out of Dragon Gate because they didn't like what was going on. But where people got fired for doing something like this is kind of really unique in pro wrestling. Yeah. I remember the All Japan one, but that was more of this is just like guys actually like doing something ridiculously bad to get themselves fired. I think we got asked a couple of times about this, and I do want to bring it up because people kept asking us if we were ever going to talk about this. The Blue Demon TV series. How far did you get through the Blue Demon TV series? I got through that first set of 20 episodes. But then when we did not know the show came back and we were back 3 episodes, it just piled up at that point. And I didn't want to watch any of the new episodes until I saw the first 3, but tracking those down was impossible. And even when I could find them on YouTube, one of the things I found interesting about them like being on TV is that if I mess around with my closed captioning enough, I could get closed captioning into English while they talk in Spanish. I could kind of follow the show a little bit more and kind of pick up on my Spanish a little bit. And that's not as easy that's not something that YouTube's going to do for you. So it was just, and then I know when we were watching the show, I think you said the same thing. It's just a lot of show to watch when they're doing 5 shows a week. It's a lot to keep up with. Yeah, it was. I mean, like when the Lucha Talk guys would ask me if I was still watching, I was like, I could watch one like a week or maybe like a weekend of like 2 episodes or something. But it's like, this is more of a binge-worthy type of show on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon where you don't, it's difficult to like watch Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it's like, and then you're not really I wasn't really that into it just because it was so like over the top. Before this whole incident that the Alvarados did, I really thought it was over the top. But now after what happened with the Alvarados, I don't. Now I'm starting to think maybe this did happen to Blue Demon, but yeah, the show, I just couldn't get into it. It just seemed so ridiculous half the time. Did you enjoy it while you were watching it, or were you pretty much thinking the same thing? I was thinking pretty much the same thing. I was enjoying when they would go to an arena and they would pretend it's like El Paso or something. Yeah. The IWRG arena. And trying to figure out which of the stand-ins was actually an IWRG Wrestling Unmasked or whoever Hip Hop Man had recruited for that day. That was interesting. But the plot was just so... It was it was so silly at times, and it's also just kind of weird for someone trying to do like a real story about wrestling, and all the matches are completely real in that universe. That was kind of tough to take seriously.
Yeah, when the first episode includes a kid holding a gun at a gangster, you kind of know it's going to be a little bit over the top. But the one thing I kind of wanted to keep watching it for was to see if they kept adding more characters, the wrestling characters, because I know they ended up having like a Carbonario Galindo type of character, but I don't think it was Carbonario Galindo because it kind of seemed like, I think they call him Carbonario, but it was some weird looking character. He didn't look like Carbonario Galindo. Obviously they had the Black Shadow character as Black Wind. How they came up with that name, how long it took them to come up with that name, I'll never know. Is this show still on?
I checked on Wikipedia, and it looks like they're finishing up the third part of the season. They were doing it still 5 days a week, but I guess the numbers must have dropped off to change it just to airing on Saturday. So it's stretching out long enough. That's the last few episodes. But remember the first episode, we saw the title match with Blue Demon and Alvarado. And they're just now getting to actually show it to the lead up to that match. Oh, really? So that's like the first episode, and that's the last episode, and everything else is just a flashback in between. Yeah, I think it's a show that I would really like. Would you watch it if it was on Netflix? If I had Netflix and I could watch it at least partly in English or captioned in English, I probably would go through it, but I would not. I'd be watching one episode every so often. I wouldn't be watching 5 episodes in a week.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a little too much. I mean, it's a telenovela. I mean, it wasn't that great. The other show that I think it ended around the same time that the season, the first season of Blue Demon TV series ended. Lucha Underground returns to our Red Network on May 31st. How excited are you that it's coming back?
I'm excited, though not as excited as I thought it would be, just because it's been so long that I have to refresh my mind about what happened, and it just feels like the series itself is in a weird place with people quitting and the whole staff for next season being unsure, even though all these episodes are completed, and I know that at least they're telling a complete story for this season. It's just the future seems much more uncertain than it was back in January. I think once we get to watch your episodes and they have good matches, hopefully, I'll get back into it, but I am not as excited as I thought I was going to be at this point.
Has your interest in it declined, like, from season to season, or is it pretty much... Because I think the first two seasons were really great, and the third season has kind of been a little more hit or miss with depending on the episode and the storyline. Has your interest kind of declined a little bit, or is it about the same?
I think it's about the same, but it's because I'm in the weird position because I saw those last episodes of the season now almost a year ago. So I know where we're going, and I'm kind of interested in finding out how we get there. But I can see for someone, but if you're just watching it from week to week, especially times where either it has no really strong direction of where they're going, no obvious direction, or the direction is to a sexy sort of title reign, I can see why people have kind of lost interest a bit into it.
So how much of it do you remember from the first half of the third season? How much do you remember?
Oh, I remembered I was writing my notes today because I'm going to write a refresher post, hopefully sometime this week, because I know a lot of people don't remember. And there's stuff that I could get off the top of my head, like the stuff that happened with the title and the stuff that happened with Matanza, but figuring out where we left, like the Katrina storyline with Ivalice's boyfriend, whose name I can't even totally remember. I have to go through my recaps and take a look and find out what was going on at that point. There was some stuff that I thought had happened that had not happened. It's just kind of all a blur. I was hoping that Lucha Underground themselves would do more to remind people of where we're at and try to get people hyped, but it seems like they're just hoping that people come aboard by themselves.
Isn't the first episode of the all night long match?
Yeah, it's the Iron Man match with the Mac and Johnny Mundo, which I guess on some level makes an easy way to return because you only have one storyline to keep track of, and maybe you'll get the rest of it later on. But it's also a lot it's asking a lot for people to come back in and get invested for a full hour on the show when they haven't seen it in months.
Yeah, and that's the Mac also. So he wasn't that, like, I know he got a little more of a push for this past season, but I think when you think of all the other guys, there's a lot more people that were interested in the Lucha guys, and maybe like like Macias and Mil Muertes. I can't even keep up with the guys' names nowadays with all the AAA stuff and how many names these guys have. What can we expect from the second half of the season? Since you were there for a few of the tapings, and I think you were the one that told me that, because I was confused with some of the stuff, and you told me that some of the stuff wasn't taped in order. So what can we expect? Is it going to be a lot? Do you think it's going to be a lot better than the first half, or it's going to be you're not really sure based on how it was taped?
I think it's going to be better. I think a lot of people, there's more of in some ways, a traditional wrestling show aspect to the matches where they're doing things that you might find on other shows. I don't want to give stuff away, but I think that there's a couple things coming up that people will be more interested to, and they'll have some more direct build instead of trying to do storylines. They're doing it heavy on backstage stuff, setting up matches. I think it'll be more setting up matches. And I think the Ultimo Lucha was really good as the first, the one at the end of the first season, and I think also feels more like the one at the end of the first season where things were actually resolved instead of pushed over to the next season. So I think people will get into it by the end if they stick with it. I think just getting people back into it might be the tough part.
You think that's going to be the difficult part, them coming back? Because what is it, 5 months that they've been off air now?
It was January 11th was the last episode, so it's 4 months. But I mean, I think it's going to take like 2 or 3 episodes before a lot of people even realize that they're back. Yeah,
it's kind of like the whole Netflix deal. I don't think they've mentioned Netflix ever since they got on there. So
no, and I think if you have Netflix, I think there's a lot of people on Netflix who watch 2 seasons and may even really liked it, but have no idea that the show's on LA or that they could go buy the rest of the episodes on iTunes, and they're just going to be, maybe periodically checking on Netflix to see if season 3 gets released. Well, that may be a long way off.
Yeah, the other thing I was surprised, like when I talk to people who, like, they tell me they watch Lucha Underground, they tell me, I'll ask them, do you have El Rey Network? And they're like, no, I don't have El Rey Network. And I'm like, wow, I guess this network isn't very big, which is a little concerning because, it takes a while for them to put stuff up on Netflix, or I think Amazon Prime and iTunes is like immediately. So that, but they
haven't had the Amazon during the season, so I hope it is immediately. But I guess we're going to find out next Thursday if they actually have that episode up. Yeah,
because I mean, at least giving them that option. Although I don't know if I would want to pay, the amount. I think it's $1.99 or something like that, 99 cents.
I think it might be $2.99 or something like that, or like $40 for the whole season. So, yeah, that is pretty pricey. I mean, it kind of may make more sense than if you didn't have cable and you're better than getting Sling TV or whatever to just watch it. But that is asking a lot compared to what other things cost.
Yeah, I got to save my $3 for the anniversary show, so. That's where I have to decide where to use my $3. So I guess we could go from Lucha Underground, considering this is actually more of a question because AAA in the last couple of months added Vampiro and Chris DeJoseph, to handling more of the backstage, the booking. A lot of that they're more involved in not just AAA but Lucha Underground. But do you notice like the difference between Vampiro and DeJoseph, not just in AAA but in Lucha Underground, the direction they're going with as far as talent goes to what Lucha Underground used previously and AAA used previously? Because I think when Conan was involved, we were getting a lot of guys, like maybe guys didn't sign with those promotions, but we were getting a lot of names of guys that were kind of like the indie darlings. And now we're kind of getting like these, like Kevin Cross, Dalton Bragg for Lucha Underground. I think for AAA, but I think Lucha Underground also has Kevin Cross, right?
Yeah, he signed and he worked dark matches, and no one's ever sure if he debuts. Yeah, but he is a Lucha Underground guy.
And I should mention someone at the Cauliflower Alley Club made it known that he had seen Kevin Cross wrestle a few times, and kind of gave me a little bit of his thoughts on him. But like I told him, I don't think we're going to get that Kevin Cross in AAA or Lucha Underground. But what are your thoughts on what they're doing, like the difference between what it was in the past compared to now? Because I think the other problem that they're kind of facing is that they kind of lost a lot of that talent that Conan brought in. They lost pretty much everyone. Like half the roster that left was brought in by Conan. Have you noticed what are your thoughts on just what they've been able to do with the roster that they have and who they've added so far?
I think some of it is coming from having Vampiro and Joseph in charge. I think Pete Cross specifically for the team was Lucha Underground. I think Vampiro sees when Dalton Bragg tells his story about being a guy who moved from the U.S., moved from an English-speaking country north of Mexico to Mexico, and is trying to make a break in Lucha Libre. He sees his own story there and wants to help that guy out. But I think it's more that AAA just doesn't have the finances or doesn't want to spend the finances to bring the people in that they were bringing before. I think they probably could still have like a Johnny Mundo coming in more regularly if they could afford it or wanted to pay for it, instead that we're seeing him once every 5 or 6 TV tapings or just on the big shows. I think they probably could still have. I think we're getting Cross doing the same thing Brian Cage was doing because Cross is probably coming in at a cheaper price than Brian Cage was coming in. I think that's we're seeing Killshot instead of Prince Puma because Killshot's probably a little bit cheaper and Marty's a little cheaper than getting those guys in. And they're not bad guys, but I think there's a money aspect more to what's going on right now.
Yeah, so you think they can afford La Mascara and Maximo and Bobby Zavala?
I think they will talk themselves into believing that La Mascara and Maximo will pay for themselves over the long term. If whatever they're paying, that they'll end up drawing more than that, especially in the buzz. But I think that's going to be the biggest sticking point is that, or they'll do what they've done with other people, is that they'll promise to pay them a lot, and then maybe things just won't work out that way.
Yeah, we'll be dealing with the same story in about 2 years about these guys disgruntled in AAA. So do you? You mentioned you watched the TV show. What do you like or dislike the unpredictable nature of the shows now? Because they basically send out a lineup, they fill out their lucha posters, and they have the lineup on there. And as soon as the show starts, everything changes. I think the last show they had, I think everything but one match had changed. I know Cibernetico noticed his compadre La Parca was working, I think, the opener or the second match. And he was very disappointed in that, to see that. Do you like that or do you dislike that?
I didn't like it last year when it was that year between really Conan taking over and Vampiro taking over where no one seemed to be in charge and that they were doing nothing but really almost a CMLL-style presentation where they had matches, but they didn't have any vignettes and that they would just do very little between every major show. But this seems like they've gone far in the other direction, but they've gone up so far that it's a show that doesn't often have many good matches. I mean, the Ayako tire match from a couple weeks ago was pretty good, and they had that 10-man tag that was fun, but there's a lot of really short WBE-style matches that just to set up an angle to do something, and they're trying to do so many angles that none of the angles are really getting meaning that much, and that it doesn't really feel like, and it feels like a lot of the angles are just angles to get people involved, but they're not really going anywhere or building any good matches. I like the idea that the TV has some life to it, but I just don't think that they're being very effective in what they're doing, and I think I'm concerned that long term that all these lineup changes, when they know what the actual lineup is and they just do not want to advertise it, it's going to hurt them in the long run because they're going to cause fans to not want to come back next year when they go to the same places and they don't get the matches they talked about. I mean, I just saw today the advertisement for the first advertisement for the taping they're doing June 3rd in Puebla, and they're advertising the Psycho Clown versus Dr. Wagner singles match, and they've advertised that 4 times and done it one of those times. And I think fans do pick up on those things, and it's going to make it a tougher sell for them next time they come through.
Yeah, it's weird. What are your thoughts on the whole La Llave a la Gloria tryout contest that they're doing? Do you think has anybody looked good for anybody shined that you've seen from not just the tryouts, but I think they've had a couple of matches where I think he was Vikingo and a couple of the other guys have made television. I think Dalton Bragg was from that too, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. For whatever reason, that session they did not show the tryout vignettes. They showed on TV. They showed on TV for their ones, but that one only aired on the Zone Ruler show. And they had a big Dalton Bragg interview too, which was really helped introducing them to fans since no one knows who this guy is.
Yeah, I heard they call him Brandon on the last show.
Yeah, they just called him, and they call him like the guy from Neza that we saw in Neza, but they need to do some. I don't think people immediately remember the guy they saw for like 2 minutes 4 weeks ago, so it wasn't a great shot. But I think it's a noble effort to find some guys who are going to be good in the undercard and help them in some ways. I think obviously Astrolux was the guy who stood out in the first tape, in the first one they did. But they've had some decent people from the other stuff, and it would help them with their depth, but there's no one showing up who immediately looks like a star that they can push at the top level, and that's really where they need their help. This is going to get them more guys who can work their openers, but what they really need to be focusing on doing is making guys, the guys who are working the openers or working the mid cards feel like top guys right now. And instead, it feels like so much is thrown into Psycho Clown, Dr. Wagner, that once that match happens, there's not going to be a really obvious match for next year's Triple Mania. They'll have a year to build, but they're just a lot of guys who they don't have an obvious match to go to, and they're going to have to build. They're going to have a big drop off when the effect from that match goes away.
You have as little faith in AAA's main event scene as Cibernetico, who laughed about La Poder del Norte as main eventers.
Well, whoever's booking these shows laughs about them too, but they just had on this week's TV, Murder Clown just tossed them around like they were nothing. They did a little bit to Bobby, but then Bobby beat them up too. I mean, the idea is that they are a top group, but they're still dressed in the same gear that they were wearing when they were opening match guys would get on TV once every 2 months, and that they're really everyone in the matches still treats them the same way, so it's not really helping them at all.
Yeah. So how excited are you about Verano de Escándalo?
Not very that much. I mean, the lineup they have is just like a group of matches that, I guess, will be maybe okay. Maybe one will surprise will be good, but there's no way with knowing if those matches are actually going to happen. And I mean, the last statement we had from Vampiro where AAA said, "Yeah, we're going to do a hair versus and a mass loss on this show," and Vampiro says, "No, we're going to do some mass losses." Then, I mean, obviously, who knows what the card will end up being. So, I mean, the TV hasn't helped at all with type. The TV seems like the TV builds on itself and doesn't really care about the major events. This TV that from this past Saturday still does not mention the six-way mass match, much less the Mamba Pimpinella match, which does not really exist on the show at all. I'm sure they'll get around to announcing it eventually, but they're really doing no help to the people who are trying to promote the show, because it's a show that they're doing no more than listing a date for at this point.
Yeah, I think the only thing I kind of enjoy that I kind of started following a little bit, I follow it obviously, but from like the feud that I'm kind of interested in seeing how if they continue it is Tejano Jr. and Hijo del Fantasma, just because I think they could have good matches. But I always worry that they're just going to throw in some other random guy, Johnny Mundo in the mix, although he hasn't been around. But I don't know, like did you really, were you really, all these people who got upset over calling that the main event for Verano Escándalo a fraud because Psycho Clown and Dr. Wagner Jr. were in the match? I think it was because they were putting their mask on the line also. It really kind of, I think that little like comment kind of tells you the difference between the thinking of Mexican lucha fans to American fans, where I think all of us kind of knew more or less, there's no chance Psycho Clown and Dr. Wagner Jr. are going to drop their mask. They're obviously going to be the ones winning. But how how weird was that? Like, I just didn't really understand why everybody got worked up about them. I don't see it as a fraud. I just see it as another match, really. I
see it as like, and making that match. I see them as like booking a match in a way that people will have a hard time taking it seriously because it's so obvious that that's going to be one of the other four guys losing, and you're kind of just. I mean, there's always been cage matches like this, or other multi-band matches where there's people in the match where you know El Hijo del Santo is not going to lose his mask in this random cage match. Mystico is not going to lose when they do 11 people in the cage on an anniversary show. He's not going to be the guy who loses his mask.
Yeah.
It's going to be somebody else. But it's still, it's so an underwhelming thing because the other four guys are so not even at their level that they kind of, if they just put those four guys on alone, no one would really care about this match. And adding those two guys in the way where you know that they're not going to be involved anyways, just kind of makes for a lame match for something that's supposed to be a big show. I mean, in some way, I'm sure whoever gets the payoff is going to be happy to get the payoff, but they're not going to draw any more fans than if they just did a 30-way tag or a trios match in that spot. It seems like a stipulation match to do a stipulation match that's not really going to help anyone.
Yeah, I think, and you know, I think we've already forgotten about the whole Pimpinella Mamba hair match. I don't even know why they had that. I think that might have been the first match they announced for that show too, because I think Albert sent us that poster, and that was like the main event, like 3 or 4 months ago, probably. Yeah.
And that might make more sense because the last few shows in Wars they've had Mamba and Pimpinella doubled up, but it's just weird that they're doing that match without mentioning it on TV really almost at all.
Yeah, I wonder what happens to these guys if Maximo shows up. I think they don't have a problem having a lot of exoticos, but that kind of devalues Pimpinella a little bit now that you have somebody else who's a little bit of a, younger and better at this stage in their careers.
Yeah, and it seems like, honestly, and this is probably harsh, but if Maximo came aboard and meant they switched back the long-term feud from Mamba versus Pimpinella to Mamba versus Maximo, it'd be so much better off for the promotion because Pimpinella's been not good and really bad kind of for the last few years. And you see in this last year, they've hidden her, so she's barely working at all, and she's only working a small part. I mean,
and the sad thing is that she was really good at one point too.
Yeah, and this is like where people are going to remember her from the bad part of her career instead of the early portion. I think I would not have even really surprised me if Mamba beat Pimpinella as a way to finally write off Pimpinella and then Maximo takes over. But it's also going to be interesting because Maximo's really never been... CMLL always protected Maximo's gimmick by never having another Exotico in there for a long time. They had the one... Di Machado came up as a rookie for a few matches, but really didn't get established there. Yeah. And I wonder if Maximo playing his gimmick with other people is going to make it harder for him to get over that gimmick, or if feuding with Mamba is going to let him is going to cause him to do different things.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to feud with Mamba.
I guess Mamba's a little bit low on the card.
Yeah.
So maybe Mamba won't be able to do things that he's been doing.
Well, I'm not going to lie. I kind of want him to feud with Mamba just so Cibernetico can watch, see the lineup, and he could rip them to shreds again just to make fun. Because, I don't know, have you heard Cibernetico's interview on Mas Lucha?
Not yet.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's pretty great. He was pretty hard on AAA and Vampiro and everyone. I guess we should get to CML just because really the only news out of CML were how everybody else is booking CML talent, bringing them in, and CML is kind of doing the same thing. But really the one, I guess, other than the Guerreros breakup, the other big thing is Soberano Jr. kind of finally getting a bit of a push now. Do you think now that these two guys have the group of guys that have left, do you see him getting a little higher on the card? Because getting rid of Maximo kind of at least there's a pretty big technical spot left there, and we don't even know what's going to happen with Dragon Lee because he's going to be traveling a lot this year. Do you think Soberano Jr. is going to get a pretty good push?
I think in the long term he will. I think if you look back, it seems like every few years they get behind some new young technico, whether it be Dragon Lee or Titan before him, and that Soberano sets that part. I think in the short term, it might be Diablo Roja getting that extra attention because it's going to move over the technical side anyways, and they can focus more on him. But I think since, I don't know, I think we're all concerned or hopeful or whatever that Dragon Lee may not be around in CML itself for many years. And I think setting up Sobriano as his long-term replacement is going to eventually move him to the top of the cards. And I think that's going to work out okay for CML.
Well, you know, that's the other thing. Like we were talking about how the talent that's left the promotions, how, you know, Pentagon and all these guys leave AAA and they're replacing them with Poder del Norte and, you know, Argenis, even though he's the Lucha Talk favorite, Argenis, a couple of other guys that aren't really that great. But then CMLL loses these guys, and you kind of have like Niebla Roja, Soberano Jr., the Junior Dinamitas. I mean, there's a lot of talent there. What are your thoughts on the Guerreros breakup? Do you think did you like it? Did you like the event, the timing of it? Because usually the CML breakups take a little bit longer. It kind of seemed like I thought it was great just because they got rid of, like, they did it sooner rather than later. But did you think it was odd that it happened on the day that all this issue with Ultimo Guerrero and the Alvarados happened, or was it just something that you thought was going to happen sooner?
I think it just kind of worked out that happened that day. I was one who was more tired of it quicker than everyone else. And CML does take forever returns, but I kind of wish that they would speed up at times so that they got their idea over a lot quicker than they gave people credit for. But I was happy to finally see it happen, and I think it's going to, at least, I'm not completely positive that Diablo Roja is going to be great as a technical, because he really was not that great as Angel La Plata. But I give them credit for trying something new and seeing if they can come up with something with it.
Do you think that's in the mix do you think Ultimo Guerrero versus Niebla Roja is in the mix for the anniversary, or no shot?
It's such a weird match to do, but they're setting up nothing else in particular at this point. And, you know, they still have plenty of time. I feel like Mascara or Dragon Lee really got started later this because Dragon Lee was in and out at this point. But it seems like just because there's no other options that maybe they do something like that, or maybe we do Angel de Oro and Diablo Roja versus Gran Guerrero and Euphoria as like a double mass or something. But it's the leading candidate just because there's not really that many candidates that they're pushing at this moment.
Yeah, so at the moment, Dragon Lee and Volador Jr. are in Japan for Best of Super Juniors. Volador Jr., I think he's already lost 2 or 3 matches, hasn't he?
He's lost 2, so if he loses one more, he's done. Yeah,
and Dragon Lee is actually he's actually beaten the really good guys in his block and lost to probably the worst guy in the block, in Tachi. What are your thoughts? Do you think Dragon Lee's going to end up winning this, or do you see someone else kind of winning it towards the end?
I think that he's going to. I think this is probably his high watermark. I think that they balance everything out so that people stay close near the end. I think by getting all these wins, he'll probably pick up at least one more. But I think that he'll probably not beat Ospreay on this next match just because they need Ospreay to keep up with him and make it an interesting last day. I think he will finish like runner-up or tied for runner-up or something like that in this block. Still do pretty well because they're setting him up for a title shot, but I don't think he's going to get to win this one. And I think Mulder is probably going to come back a little bit too, but I'm not sure he's going to do as well. And it's kind of, if he doesn't do as well, it's kind of weird they sent him not to do well, because since he's the guy who headlines the Fantastic Mania Tour every year, I think he would only want to use him if he's going to be pretty protected on these shows, but they seem to have gone a different way.
Yeah. Have you watched any of the matches, or just kind of not just the first show?
I watched the first show and the second show, and then I started on the third show, but I just haven't had time to keep on watching. I really want to see the Ricochet Dragon Lee match and some of the other stuff.
You couldn't watch it because you were watching IWRG's Raid to the Ring, right?
No, I have not. That's on the stuff to get watched by. That may take a little longer to get to, but that's a pretty long watch, it sounds like.
Yeah. I got to 25 minutes, and Veneno was doing like a karate chop, and I thought, I thought, I could watch something else instead of this. I don't know why I picked that, because it's an hour and a half, and I thought, man, why did I pick this? Like, there's so many other. I think within that, I watched 25 minutes. I probably could have watched the NDA matches, during that time and probably enjoyed them. I don't know if I would have enjoyed Rush versus Masada, but the other news from CML is really they're basically getting a lot of they're getting work out, not just with New Japan, but Ring of Honor is going to get them. They're going to be working in the U.S., in the U.K. Terrible and Ultimo Guerrero are going to be in Ring of Honor in June, and in the U.K., I think it's Ultimo Guerrero, Rey Bucanero, Atlantis, and Mystico. You kind of mentioned something like you were confused by that list for the U.K. tour. What did you think of that?
Yeah, it just seems like, I don't know if Ring of Honor is letting CML pick the guys and CML is picking people that they like to send on vacations, but it seems like New Japan has a much better idea of who's going to fit well with the promotion they're offering than Ring of Honor. I can see sending some Rudos, maybe some guys who are going to play off other people, but I would expect that you have sent Titan or Boulder or someone in that high flyer in the UK group, and to just have more exciting matches, to have a more logical partner. I think Atlantis will get treated well, but I don't think Atlantis is the guy that most Ring of Honor fans are going to want to see at this point. And I think it's nice to see that Terrible gets a chance to go to Ring of Honor for the shows in June, but he's a guy who I think is not immediately going to get over with that audience. And I think there's a wrong but strong feeling among U.S. fans, the kind of fans that follow Ring of Honor, that CML is all about high flyers and people doing big spots, but the guys that they bring in aren't going to live up to that expectation.
Yeah, I'm really surprised Terrible is going, just because I never expected him ever to be in Ring of Honor. And then, it's a different Ring of Honor now also, because I always pictured it as a place that, they were going to, like, my thought of American promoters is that they're going to go for like you said, the flashier guys or a big name. And Terrible is a big name, but I don't really view him I kind of view him as a guy who, like, a diehard wrestling fan would appreciate, whereas, like, a diehard lucha fan more than anything, really. And I don't even think Terrible even gets booked in the U.S. that much. I mean, I don't see him listed that often. The other group that's also bringing in CML guys is the Powerbomb TV Breaking the Barrier show. They're bringing in Guerrero Maya Jr., Triton, Puma, and Tiger. Although I don't know what Triton. What's going on with Triton? Is he still in CML? Is he? He seems to be all over the place right now.
Yeah, it seems like, I don't know what the exact details are, but it seems like there's something happening where he's not going to be located in Chicago anymore. So I don't know if that means that he's coming back to Mexico or if he's doing something else. But I would say he's probably questionable for that show, and they may look for somebody else. Oh,
another replacement for that. I think that's the second replacement. Although, really, if you have Puma, Tiger, and Guerrero Maya Jr., who are pretty reliable, I mean, you could add anybody else. The other news, I know you've kind of mentioned it a lot. We're kind of seeing a lot of the bigger U.S. promotions, WWE, Impact, Ring of Honor, that we talked about. They've been using a lot of luchadors. What are your thoughts on how? Do you notice? Are they pretty much using them the same? WWE NXT using Grand Metalik, Andrade Cien Almas, Impact using Alberto Patron, Garza Jr., and Laredo Kid. Do you think they're using them properly, or do you just think they're kind of not really getting the most out of those guys?
It's sometimes, I mean, it's different in different places. I think something's not connecting with NXT and Sombra or Cien Almas. He's having when I tune in to watch him on TV, he's having really good matches, but they seem like they've lost interest in doing more with that, which is, it's kind of, he's had, like, if you look through the TV, he's had pretty good matches, but he seems like he's only being used to put over a new guy in a takeover special, which is disappointing because I was at the last takeover special, but all the guys that are pushing, he's already lost to, so he couldn't be on the show this time. But hopefully, I'm hoping that the whole he's partying stuff is some sort of long angle to lead somewhere, but I'm not really, I'm concerned that it also might be just a long angle to him being taken off TV and disappearing entirely. I think the other guys with, obviously Impact is doing a lot with Alberto, but that's more because Alberto is a former WWE guy than anything to do with the Mexican. And I'm also interested in those Impact AAA shows, house shows we hear about coming up. Because if Alberto ends up working house shows for AAA. That's going to be interesting considering their bad breakup. So I don't know if it's going to actually work out like people think. But for like Laredo and Garza and Metallic, it feels like they were more included to be a token Mexican presence on those shows, a token luchador presence.
Yeah.
And same thing with Alvarado too, and that they don't, especially, I think WWE knows what they have in Metallic and thinks he's spectacular, but he doesn't fit the mold they have, and they're unwilling to change their mold. With TNA or with Impact, I don't think they really even realize what they have with Laredo and Garza, and they, especially since they're only using these two guys who have never been as a tag team. I think especially Laredo would be just awesome if they drew in the X division, but they're just they needed two Mexicans for what they were going to do, and they were the first two Mexicans that they could get from the Crash, and I don't even know if they're going to be there long term with everything going with AAA, that eventually, if AAA can, they'll probably want to get that spot themselves, and this will be a couple of weird entries on their match database that they were in TNA for a while, but through no fault of their own, they're probably can get spaced out.
Yeah, we'll see Murder and Monster Clown on Impact at some point. The thing with Metallic and Andrade Cien for me, it kind of just feels like typical WWE. I think more so from the 80s when they were getting all the territory names, where you kind of had guys who were really good in the territories, and then they showed up in WWE, and people would be. The only difference is now I think more fans now are a little smarter to what the talent is like outside of WWE, so they complain a little more. But back then, I remember when they brought in like Junkyard Dog, and people who never saw him in Mid-South, they would say, "Oh, that guy's, he's a WWE guy. He likes to dance. He likes to clown around." And then you tell them, "Yeah, but you should have seen him in Mid-South. He was pretty great." Or Terry Taylor being the Red Rooster, he was really good back when he was in the territories in Mid-South and Texas and all that. So to me, it kind of feels like that's what they're doing with a lot of these guys, like Nakamura and all those guys. They don't really. I think they just have so much talent that they really. But in their mind, the promotion is built around the bigger names, and it's like everybody else is just there to fill out a spot or a role. With Impact, I mean, really, I don't even want to watch Impact, so it's like, I don't know. You guys are going to have to tell me what they're doing there, because I know Alberto's main eventing, but like you said, he's an ex-WWE guy more than a luchador nowadays. I was going to ask you, were you at the show that they had Dunn versus I forgot the other guy's name, Bate?
What show was this?
The NXT show, I think.
Oh yeah, the NXT show. Yeah, Tyler Bate and what's his name? I'm remembering.
Pete Dunne.
Pete Dunne.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty good. My seats for the show were not very good, so a lot of the grabbing and pulling the fingers and some of the smaller stuff didn't come through well live. But I watched back again on TV, and it held up pretty well. I think it helped a lot that the crowd was surprisingly really excited for guys that they had not seen before. But I think that says something that the NXT audience is different from the general WWE audience, where they're more aware of these guys, or they will try to find out about these guys after they're introduced to them. I think the one great shame is that Metallic got put on the 205 brand instead of being kept in NXT, because I think if he went to NXT, I think he would get over pretty well, and at least you could have they could do him and Somber for some stuff, and I think people would enjoy that a lot. Yeah,
and it's weird because these guys aren't that tall either, so it's like, it's not like it's this thing where you kind of see guys who are not Mexican and they get an opportunity. And Mascara Dorada, Metallic can have great matches with other guys, and it's like they don't really do that. They just have them.
And all these guys did to build up their match was they had the TV show, but basically what they had them do was the 1 minute interview in the back was they cut up in a few slices. They could do something like that for Grand Metallic with stuff else if they really wanted to. But that 205 live show is just like their normal WWE show where everyone has to be able to do skits and stuff to set up matches. And I don't think I'm sure he's working on his English, but I don't think he's ever going to fit that kind of mold.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever going to be able to speak perfect English where it's going to really matter. Because I mean, I think you, if you're going to learn English, you have to learn it at a younger age. As you get older, it gets harder to learn a second language. So it's I kind of worry about him. Like, I don't worry about him because he's getting paid. He's getting paid a lot better than he would in Mexico, and I think he's probably getting a bit. At some point, if he stays there for a couple of years, it's going to increase the amount of money and interest that there's going to be in him. So I think
it feels kind of selfish to want to see these guys in other places. It is like he's getting paid more. He's probably working far less states. He has much better travel. He's probably even living in a nicer place. But it just seems like you're wasting some of these guys' best years by having them do what they're doing. But at the same time, like if Sam were to let go tomorrow, I'm sure New Japan will be calling him up and trying to get him in a big spot. And I'm sure whenever he does leave, he's going to be doing something with Nitro and with the rest of his group. And I'm sure, and Mattel could come back and be Dorado tomorrow because he left in such a good way, and he'll be pushed at the top. Maybe it'd be something like Crisco where he's not pushed as hard as he could, but he'll still be in a good spot. So he'll still be in a good spot. It's just frustrating to wait. We're kind of like in a waiting period for these guys until they can do something that'll be more rewarding.
Yeah, and like you said, update with the deal that they have, CMLL, Ring of Honor, and New Japan. He has that's a pretty nice deal where he could work all those. But yeah, like I said, I think I don't mind him being there, and like if he's getting paid well, it sucks. As a fan, it sucks because you want to see him more often, and you know how good he is, and you want to see him succeed, not just monetarily. But in the ring, you kind of want to see him progress because I'm sure him and Sombra want to be, in WWE, like higher on the card. I don't think they're just thinking about, hey, we're getting paid better than we were in Mexico. We want to be higher, but it's like, you can't. You gotta work. Hopefully, they could actually at some point end up in WWE, like on Raw or SmackDown. Although I don't even watch those shows, so what do I care really? At this point, other than Rob watching it. Do you watch Raw and SmackDown, or you don't watch any of that stuff now?
Over the last few months, I've finally stopped watching most of Raw. I will tune in if there's something specific. I still have my DVR, so I can. If something is interesting to happen, I can always go back and watch Raw. But I don't even have SmackDown on there. The only time I watch it back is when I've known in advance that there's going to be. Well, right, okay, it's going to be on it, but otherwise, it's just like there's so much other stuff to watch. There's so much Lucha to watch that I'd rather, I feel bad about not watching as much indie Lucha as I wanted to watch, so it's just easier to use that time on something that I'm going to enjoy more.
Yeah, and I watched that one Impact episode. I had enough. It's not even going to make my DVR or anything, really. If it was on Hulu, I wouldn't even watch it. I don't care. I have no interest in it. It's done. So what do you expect? What's the upcoming schedule for the Cubs fan? What's going to happen as far as Lucha Libre? Anything you expect to happen in the upcoming days that you're going to be reporting on, or any news, anything you're looking forward to coming up?
I think that this upcoming Friday is going to be interesting to see if Maximo and Mascara actually show up, or if they don't, then how the fans react, because I think the people have put the pieces together enough to expect them to be there, and they're going to be, that Mexico City crowd is a lot more demanding than if they were running at like in Veracruz or someplace a smaller city that doesn't get big shows all the time. Mm-hmm. So I think they're going to be letting the chanting and letting the AAA fans know all that, AAA people know all day that they're expecting to see these guys. I'm interested to see if any big plan actually develops in CML, and I want to see what the reaction is going to be like. Just not even like be positive or negative, but how much people seem to be paying attention when the Lucha Underground comes back next week.
Yeah. I mean, I know the other news that's going to come up is the Lucha meme shows. How excited are you about those?
I am. I think I might have already got myself in trouble in the last August days. I think the lineups look good. I'm just but my enthusiasm level for these shows has gone down as it's gone longer without us being able to see these shows. I think I'd be thrilled and I'd be writing a lot more about like the Arena Pueblo show if we could actually see it, but as something that's just going to happen, and that maybe I'll be able to see someone taking some handhelds or maybe see some stuff on Mas Lucha, but not the complete show.
I know they're putting up.
It's good to know that people are trying, but until we get to that point, it's like I'm not at the point where I'm like, okay, well, they're working on it, they'll get it soon. It's like if it feels like we're at the point that if they don't have it, I should be focusing on other stuff and stop holding my breath on these things.
Yeah, I know they put up the MDA, Lucha Memes, I think it was the Monterey show, some of them stuff. Although they haven't posted the one match I want to watch, Rey Scorpion versus Kaifan, but the rest of the stuff looks interesting. I know DTU hasn't done an iPay-per-view since that one show they did, which kind of tells me that they didn't do too well. But I think the problem with, like, you do one and you expect that one to do well, this is like, I don't think they realize that they have to, like, continue to do it to, like, you know, develop some sort of progression where they'll get a following. You know, there's going to be people that are going to say, hey, I want to watch this show now, because, like, they're bringing in June, they're bringing in all those American guys, Desmond Xavier and a few other, Trey Miguel and a couple other. Although I don't really know who those guys are, but I know they're going to be debuting in PWG. I think once they debut in PWG, people are going to be like, hey, these guys are good. Why don't you guys? And these guys won't have aired iPay-per-views or made it available. I kind of worry about what they're. I mean, you can't just do one and then stop. I think that's kind of what it's. I think that more than anything else scares away fans from, like, continuing to purchase your product, because I mean, it happened with AAA with Triple Mania and all that stuff, because they did such a piss poor job on their shows that people were just like, we're not going to order it. But you got to keep doing it, and I think that them just quitting on doing it kind of makes people think, if you're not interested, I'm not interested. And I think that's what's going on with a lot of these guys. Like, I kind of wish they would just continue on, rather than tell us the same story of, oh, we're going to do it at some point. I know Danny's excuse is that he's getting married, and I understand that, but it's like, you got to kind of, like, start speeding this stuff up. It's kind of disappointing. It's like 2017, I was so excited after the DTU show that they were going to do more of that stuff, and it's like, we're not really seeing that. And, you know, the only other, and then with Elite, do you think Elite's going to come back, or is that pretty much dead?
I think it's dead. I would be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, in some other form that the people who are left try to go to somebody else and try to get something started just because they have nothing to do, or they don't have just to create something to do, or something that they can own that they can go around promoting, since maybe even the Elite name they can't use. But I don't think we'll see that TV show. But on the indie stuff, I think even more than, I mean, even if the tech issues and putting video up and trying to figure out how to do it without piracy is an issue, there needs to be a greater emphasis on, instead of just promoting a show, promoting a whole promotion, having a whole cycle of things going on. What we get with DTU and Memes and Charo and other things is they promote one show, they do a good job of getting that lineup out there, but then we never hear what happens on the show. We don't hear angles built up. We don't give reasons to keep hearing. There's usually not any promos or something. I mean, maybe filming things, doing announcing, editing, all that stuff takes time, but putting up a simple results post and saying, and some photos about what happened with your last show and how this is going to build to your new show should not be that hard. And I think outside of Tina Blah's full promotion, who sends press releases about everything, none of the other indie promotions really do that on a consistent basis. DTU will have, like, we'll start to do, like, 2 match results from a show, but then they won't put the main event, or they won't know what the show actually ended. The other shows, they're out there, they happen, but they don't promote how the show was a great success, and you'll be missing out if you're not there next time after it happens. It's just a lot of similar events and nothing really connecting them to get people hyped for the next one.
Yeah, I think of the 100 plus posters we find every week, how many results do we usually get? Like maybe like 20 show results?
If you take out the CML stuff, I mean, it may be 5. Maybe it's not that much. I mean, I've started to dig around on Facebook and stuff, and you'll find like small promotions that will post even just live video of their matches, but they won't ever write what happened in their matches. It's too many promotions only seem like they exist on the day of the show, and to really grow, they need to be existing more than that, more full time. They need to have something out there on a regular basis to make sure people care about them. Yeah, I agree. I think that's, and I think that's an old school and we could even say it's an old school mentality. But I think at least the one benefit that a lot of those promotions had back then was that there was a little more
with the magazines. And even then, I don't think they really promote. They really didn't go out of their way to like send results or stuff like that. You kind of have to like more or less figure it out as you go along, reading the articles and depend on other reporters and stuff like that. It would make everyone's life so much easier if they did it themselves. And I like how a lot of the guys get upset when you get the results wrong. Like they'll tell you, hey, you got that wrong. And it's like, you have some people who do that. And then there's a couple of promoters that I know that when I'll tell them who won the match, like I'll ask them who won the match. And they're like, yeah, you write down whatever you want. We're okay with it. We don't care. Which I think I'd rather get that than, like somebody who's going to get upset over me guessing who won a match that you promoted and you're not telling me who won the match in the first place. But like you said, it's you kind of wish. I kind of wish that was one of those things that we were getting more of. But I don't know. I guess we're never going to get that from lucha promoters or lucha libre in general.
I just, with all the stuff that's out there, and I floated this theory on the Como Sastre podcast, is that all it takes really is that someone decides that they're going to do it like no one else does it and do all the stuff that U.S. people do. And if they find success, then maybe everyone else copies them. But it's going to take the one person who tries to do it more complete than everyone else. And since everyone seems like they copy themselves, it'll take one person just really going out the norm.
Yeah, and poor AAA, poor Oscar with AAA's lineup changes. He's kind of made a couple of mistakes on his results when he posted results. I feel bad when I mention it, but it's like I can't understand them half the time. It's like I have to check your results to make sure his are correct.
Yeah, it's tough to keep track of. I wonder. I'm sure at some point we're going to hear a story about something. Vampiro kind of hinted at that something didn't happen that was supposed to happen, or some match was missed completely, because there's so much to keep track of. I'm sure they're having trouble doing it all themselves.
Yeah. Well, maybe we're going to have to ask Vampiro to tell us the inside. Maybe Vampiro can give us the results and all that as part of his.
Maybe I would subscribe to the Vampiro newsletter because it seems like he has the scoops. So that's
I wish he didn't delete that one message where he was trashing everybody. He was the one creating in charge, and he's been trying to keep AAA alive. And it's like, oh, come on, man. So anything you'd like to plug? I always forget this.
Yeah, I have the LuchaBot Twitter and website, and the Lucha Wiki, which I don't do enough to update, and I hear about that occasionally, but I'm trying to do my best. And then I'm sure I'm going to roll a couple of Lucha Underground stuff next week about catching up where we are in the storylines and trying to catch up where we are with the Netflix and people leaving and all that stuff. So if you haven't been paying attention for 5 months. And then I think I have a couple other things I'm working on, but nothing that close at this point.
And we could also find you on YouTube also, where you have all the videos. You keep us. I think you brought a little organization into the Lucha Libre community more than anybody else. Just because I think before you, I think all of us kind of like we were just as bad as the promoters, or I think we kind of gave up on the promoters early on. I'm curious, when did you start what made you want to start the Lucha blog, really?
Because I was trying to get this information on my own. I was following the Galavision show at that point and just trying to find out who people were and trying to keep track of like what was going on was enough work by myself that I decided that it'd be useful just to post it on the website so in case anyone else was looking for it. And it did seem like it took a long time for anyone else to look for it, but eventually I got there.
Yeah, because I remember you used to do reviews for like shows like WCW and WWF, like the B shows, wasn't it? Like the weekend shows, right?
Yeah, it's sad to admit this, and I think I might have to write about it more just to admit it in public. But it's going to be this September. Would be like the 20th anniversary of the first WCW Worldwide recap I wrote, which is the first wrestling anything I wrote. So I've been doing this a disturbingly long time at this point.
How have you been able to escape the Between the Sheets guest list?
I think I just don't have the block of 6 hours free to be on it yet. So at some point they'll be dragging me in, but it just hasn't worked out yet.
I laugh because I think I told one of the guys I was telling one of the Lucha Talk guys, I go, I'm pretty sure I haven't done that show because because everybody just assumes I've been watching Lucha and that's all I know about. But it's like, I think you, Rob, myself, I think even Dr. Lucha, we all kind of know a little bit. We kind of watched WCW. We saw the good points and the low points and the disastrous points. Same thing with, I don't think I would remember anything from WWE, but it's like, I'm just kind of glad that we're kind of like in the, they're kind of distracted asking the other people and not worrying about asking us, because otherwise, I don't know if I could do a 6-hour block of trying to remember everything that happened in 1997 or before that.
Yeah, it sounds like a very challenging show to do.
Yeah, I heard they do a lot of research for it, so they do put in the work for that, and they obviously have to do a 6-hour podcast. So I guess that's all you got. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think that's everything. The Cubs are, hopefully, as you listen to this, hopefully you found out that they've gotten on the space of the low jam that they're currently in and that they won, because it's kind of close right now. But the Cubs are doing better than they were a few weeks ago, so that's good.
Yeah, and I know we're kind of helping them out by taking down the Cardinals. I saw that 13-inning game last night, and it was, first of all, I was very disappointed that Clayton Kershaw didn't win, but I don't know if you've watched any of the highlights or games with the new Dodger home run hitter Cody Bellinger. He's getting some Chris Bryant comparisons.
Well, that's pretty good comparisons to have.
Yeah. So it's good. You watching any of the basketball or hockey or anything, or you're basically not watching it? You're basically just watching Lucha at this point.
I tried to watch some basketball, but the playoffs have been so one-sided and not interesting that maybe I'll get into the finals, but I haven't really spent much time on it so far.
Yeah, hockey you don't like?
Hockey, I will. If someone tells me they're double overtime, and I'm doing nothing, I'll turn it on, but that's about it.
Because you won't be doing a hockey special with Rob, right?
No, that's Hockey Talk is banned from the podcast.
just like MMA is banned from my podcast at this moment. So are you planning on going to Mexico again this year, or has Rob not been able to convince you?
Rob is going to keep on talking to me until he's convinced. At this point, I have no plans. I don't make plans more than a month in advance. I think it's a good way to go.
Yeah, because I know that when you went to Triple Mania, I think you mentioned it like a week prior, didn't you? Like that was something that you didn't really plan that too far ahead, was it?
I don't think I had everything locked into late, but I think a lot of times it just kind of develops late for me. I think to the frustration to other people I may go in with, I may wait till the last minute to make my mind up on some things.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you do end up going and bring us more stories and tell us. Maybe you could interview Black Cherry this time around, because you could like drive in a car with him and interview him and ask him No.
We actually had a chance to do that once, but I was blanked on questions to ask, and it was before we could film things on the camera. So hopefully we'll get another chance of that. We always meet interesting people there, and sometimes I remember enough Spanish to ask some questions, and most of the time I just let Rob ask questions and then nod as if I understand what's going on. But if I go back, hopefully we'll do more of that.
Yeah, because I know you've been around like Titan and a few of other luchadors, so. No. Usually you don't have a lot of like questions for her then prepared. No preparation.
No, it's just like it's just whoever we run into that day. We really don't know who we're going to meet sometimes. So
yeah,
it's just,
and you don't go with the plan of interview them, right? No,
I just go with the plan. Hopefully, show up in one piece, and then whoever happens to be around, we're usually like among the last people to leave. Those people, whoever's sticking around, we can ask questions to. But we don't really have usually detailed plans beyond then.
I think that's the Lucha way of like doing interviews, because I think we kind of just go in and don't really ask the guys. But like towards the end, like if somebody's there, we'll ask them, hey, can we interview? Although we do it before. But it's not something that we plan that well in advance. Like I don't really like have notes and stuff to interview guys. It's more of a like, because you always figure they're going to reject you or something. But we've been pretty fortunate. I think other than Johnny Mundo and Cholo de Tijuana, everybody else has been pretty easy to get. I think Mundo told us he could be a good or bad person. So we've dealt with him, the good side of him, and we've dealt with the bad side of him. So, but he's an all right guy. I don't have a problem with him. But everybody else, I mean, Nero Casas, Negro Navarro, everybody else has been really great. Traumas, I know Trauma. We usually end up talking before we do the interview. So I did ask him about that stuff, that the legal stuff that we were talking that usually gets brought up when everybody's talking about luchadors and legal problems. And I think that disappeared rather quickly. But, yeah, all the guys are really easy to deal with. I kind of noticed the Mexicans are easier to talk to than the American guys for some reason. Like, I think American guys aren't as maybe it's because they kind of expect you to, like, contact them and let them know ahead of time for an interview, whereas Mexicans, I think in Mexico, they're kind of used to, like, just having guys show up and ask them, hey, can I interview you for Mas Lucha or for Boxy Lucha? So I think they might be
there's so many random Facebook sites that do interviews and do lucha covers now that I think they're just used to random people coming up and asking them to do stuff.
Yeah.
And they hope that the person knows what they're talking about. But for me, what I've noticed is that if I introduce myself as myself, people know who I am. But if I mention the YouTube channel, then they know who I am, and then they're very happy to see me. One of their matches is up there somewhere.
Yeah. Like with me, they don't know who I am at all. Like I show up and then like after, because I don't have the your website and I think your YouTube channel more than anything is like a lot more popular than anything we have. So it's like it's usually them either just recognizing us from Kurt's Facebook page. Really, I think Kurt's Facebook page probably gets us more recognition than anything else because he posts a lot of his pictures like him doing funny faces. So I think a lot of the guys know it, but most of the time it's because it's like I know like Superboy or somebody like that. And as you know, one or two guys, they start telling these guys, yeah, they'll talk. You could talk to them. They won't. They're cool or whatever. So we've gone through that. It's been a lot easier to do lately than I was expecting more of a resistance from guys. Like I was expecting like even like Mano Negra being a veteran wrestler or a luchador and being older. I kind of expected him to be like a little harder to deal with. And the guy was great. Like as I said in the story, I mean, he came out and like during intermission and looked for us, except we were doing another interview. And I mean, that kind of shows you how these guys are so much more professional about how they deal with the media, no matter how big or small it is. Whereas American guys, it's like, yeah, I got my friends here. I'm going to just blow these guys off. It doesn't matter. And it's like, yeah, it's interesting. It's a fun, like I told Nero Casas when he asked me what we've been up to. It's like, you tell him, yeah, we go to these lucha shows, we try to get interviews, and we get some. Worst case, we have a story to tell on the podcast. That's cool. Yeah, so I should let you go now so you could do other things. And I think you're going to watch the Cubs right now. Are they still playing right now, or?
Yeah, they're still alive at this point. So I'll probably watch them of that.
Yeah, so I'll let you go. Thanks for doing the podcast. I hopefully you could do another one. Are you up for doing another podcast?
Sure. Of course.
You haven't gotten tired of doing this podcast yet?
No, I only have to do a podcast every 2 months, so I think that's the rule.
I know you're one. I noticed that you guys did a podcast this week. I was like, oh no, you did a podcast, but it's like I understood because it was a pretty big story that happened. It's something very uncommon that happens.
Yeah, definitely.
So thanks again for doing the podcast, Cubs. As usual, people can find you on the luchablog.com. They could find all of us on Twitter, social media. Just go luchaworld.com. You can find links on there for not just my site, your site, all our Facebook pages, all our Twitter accounts. I think I even have Kurt's Facebook page. I think next podcast will be a Lucha Classica podcast with Dr. Lucha. I think we're doing the AAA year one. We were going to do year one, but we're going to do the first month of it because I just realized while doing research on AAA, the first month is insane. I think the first 6 months would have driven us crazy, but the first month would have been is so interesting that I think we could do a show on that. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you guys again next time.